The myth of meritocracy, why Black women's success demands system change, not just hustle. Good morning, everyone. I stand before you today deeply moved and transformed by a recent conversation that has fundamentally shifted how I understand power, progress, and possibility in America. I had the extraordinary privilege of interviewing Kimberly Banks on the Soft Girl Era podcast, a visionary whose work has illuminated the darkest corners of systemic inequity while simultaneously creating pathways to liberation for countless Black women. Kimberly isn't just a researcher or advocate, she's a revolutionary whose data driven approach to dismantling barriers has forced institutions to confront uncomfortable truths about who they serve and who they silence. Her methodologies have been adopted by Fortune 500 companies, her frameworks taught in business schools nationwide, and her courage has inspired a generation of Black women to demand what they deserve rather than accept what they are offered. What makes Kimberly's perspective so invaluable is her unflinching commitment to truth telling backed by rigorous data while simultaneously offering practical solutions that empower Black women to thrive despite systemic barriers. She doesn't just diagnose problems, she creates blueprints for transformation. We've all heard the narrative that we live in a meritocracy: work hard, get educated, play by the rules, and success will follow. It's a comforting story, isn't it? It's a story that allows us to believe the system works. It's a story that suggests the playing field, if not entirely level, is at least navigable for everyone willing to put in the effort. But what if that story is fundamentally flawed? What if the data tells us something entirely different? In my conversation with Kimberly, we explored a reality that shatters this comfortable narrative. Despite decades of diversity initiatives, mentorship programs, and corporate pledges, the data from 2025 reveals a shocking stagnation in the gender pay gap, particularly for Black women. This isn't just disappointing, it's devastating. Women overall still earn only 83 cents for every dollar earned by men, the same as last year. This gap has barely shrunk, moving just 4 cents since 2003. For Black women, the situation is even more dire, just 64 cents to the white male dollar. But here's what's truly shocking, and what Kimberly emphasized repeatedly during our interview. Black women have become the most educated demographic in America in terms of college and graduate education enrollment. Yet they still face the widest pay gaps and remain drastically underrepresented in leadership roles, with only 4% of C suite executives across major US companies being Black women as of 2023. Let that sink in for a moment. The most educated, the lowest paid, the least represented in leadership. This fundamentally challenges the common narrative that education alone is the great equalizer. It forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Individual effort, no matter how extraordinary, cannot overcome systemic barriers. When I asked Kimberly about this disconnect, she said something that stopped me in my tracks. We've been sold the myth that if we just work twice as hard, we'll get half as far. But the data shows we're working 3 times as hard and still falling behind. At some point, we have to acknowledge this isn't about individual performance, it's about structural inequity. This insight shifts our entire understanding of the problem. It's not about fixing Black women, it's about fixing broken systems. Throughout our conversation, 3 key insights emerge that I believe are essential for anyone committed to creating truly equitable workplaces and economies. First, the persistence of structural barriers cannot be overstated. When we look at the numbers, the evidence is overwhelming. Only 25% of C-level leaders are women, and a mere 5% represent racial minority females. Black women hold just 5.4% of the nation's state legislative seats, despite being 7.8% of the population. This underrepresentation extends across all levels of leadership and decision making positions. It's not a pipeline problem, it's a bias problem, it's a power problem, it's a problem of systems designed to maintain existing hierarchies rather than dismantle them. Second, leadership representation remains critically low, and this matters for everyone, not just Black women. Research consistently shows that diverse leadership leads to better decision making, increased innovation, and stronger financial performance. When we exclude Black women from leadership, we're not just harming their careers, we're harming our collective potential. And third, entrepreneurship has emerged as both resistance and necessity. Black women owned businesses increased by over 40% between 2017 and 2024, outpacing the growth rates of every other demographic group. This entrepreneurial surge isn't just about opportunity, it's about survival and creating spaces where Black women can thrive when traditional workplaces failed them. As Kimberly put it, we're not just building businesses, we're building lifeboats from the system that was never designed to carry us to success. Let me share some specific stories that illuminate these patterns. For generations, Black women have been positioned at the margins of the American economic dream, shunned by traditional corporate ladders, underfunded by investors, and overlooked by policymakers. According to the 2024 annual business survey by the US Census Bureau, Black women entrepreneurs faced significant barriers to traditional business funding and support systems. Despite these challenges, they didn't wait for the system to change. Instead, they created their own entrepreneurial ecosystem, leveraging community support and alternative funding methods. The results speak for themselves. Black women now own nearly 2.7 million businesses in the United States, making them one of the fastest growing groups of entrepreneurs. Between 2017 and 2024, the number of Black women owned businesses increased by over 40%, outpacing every other demographic group. This entrepreneurial movement has created economic opportunities not just for individual Black women, but for entire communities, establishing new models of business leadership that center Black women's experiences and needs. As Kimberly noted in our interview, when you're systematically excluded from traditional paths to wealth and leadership, you don't just give up, you innovate, you create new paths. And that's exactly what Black women have done throughout American history. This pattern extends beyond business into political leadership as well. Black women have historically been underrepresented in political office despite their high civic engagement and voting rates. However, coordinated efforts to recruit, train, and support Black women candidates have led to incremental but significant progress. New records were set for women's representation in state legislatures across most race and ethnicity groups following the 2024 elections. Black women now hold 5.4% of the nation's state legislative seats, representing progress, though still short of their 7.8% share of the population. Black women have long been the backbone of political organizing in their communities, but face barriers to their own candidacies. Their increased representation has led to more policy attention to issues affecting Black communities and women, though the gap between representation and population share indicates continued work is needed. Perhaps the most striking example we discussed was what Kimberley calls the education employment paradox for Black women. Despite being the most educated demographic in America in terms of college and graduate education enrollment, Black women face the widest pay gaps and remain drastically underrepresented in leadership. Some Black women have focused on building their own professional networks, mentorship programs, and leadership development initiatives specifically designed to address the unique challenges they face. While progress has been slow at the systemic level, these initiatives have created pathways to success for individual Black women and build solidarity networks that provide crucial support. The education as equalizer narrative has proven insufficient for Black women who continue to face both racial and gender discrimination, even with advanced degrees. Yet, Black women have maintained their educational achievement despite limited returns, demonstrating extraordinary resilience and determination. During our conversation, Kimberly shared a powerful affirmation that she repeats to herself daily: I am not the exception, I am the rule. My success is not despite my Blackness and womanhood, but because of the strength, wisdom, and resilience they have given me. This affirmation challenges the exceptionalism narrative that often surrounds successful Black women, the idea that they are somehow special or different from other Black women. Instead, it recognizes that Black women's achievements are not anomalies, but expressions of their inherent capabilities when barriers are removed. As we wrapped up our interview, I asked Kimberly what gives her hope in the face of such persistent challenges. Her answer was both simple and profound. The next generation of Black girls who refuse to shrink themselves to fit into spaces not designed for them. They're not just adapting to existing systems, they're building new ones. So I stand before you today, not just to share information, but to ignite transformation. The comfortable stories we tell ourselves about meritocracy and equal opportunity are not just inaccurate, they're dangerous. They place the burden of systemic failure on individual shoulders. They blame the victims rather than the architects of inequity. The question is no longer whether these systems are broken. The data proves they are. The question is what we're willing to do about it. Are we content to celebrate the exceptional few who manage to overcome impossible odds? Or are we brave enough to build systems where excellence isn't exceptional, but expected and enabled? This isn't just about justice for Black women, though that alone should be enough. This is about our collective future. Any system that systematically wastes the talents, insights, and leadership of its most educated demographic is a system designed for mediocrity, not excellence. I challenge you today to move beyond awareness to action. If you're in a position of power, examine your hiring practices, your promotion patterns, your pay structures. If you're an investor, look at who receives your funding and who doesn't. If you're a colleague, ask yourself who you amplify and who you silence. As Kimberly emphasized, solidarity without sacrifice isn't solidarity at all. If your equity work doesn't cost you something, comfort, privilege, or power, you're not doing equity work. The time for incremental change has passed. The time for revolutionary transformation is now, not just because it's right, but because our shared future depends on it. When we unlock the full potential of Black women's leadership, innovation, and vision, we don't just change their lives, we change the world. Thank you